Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discuss the Detroit Lions' incredible 34-31 Thursday night victory over the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about what we liked, what we didn't like, and where things stand for the Lions following their franchise first 11-game winning streak. We'll also talk about that head coach, Dan Campbell. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Jameer Gibbs, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast that drops on Mondays. James, good to have you here.
Good to be here for a Victory Friday. An unusual one.
Friday.
Hope, 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Yes, 2 in a row. And that, you heard, wasn't just me, but that was Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, as well as Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He is the current scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, as usual, we're happy to have you here with us.
It's a pleasure to talk Lions football again.
All right, and as we get ready to do that, let's hear from the man, the myth, the legend in making himself, Coach Campbell.
Man, what a win. That was a hell of a job by our players and our coaches, man. That was a total team effort. We talked about it. What we were going to need going in, the style that we needed to play with, and we wanted that defense just cut it loose. Just go play, man. Effort, finish, and man, they did that. God, they did that. It's a hell of a job by AG, and those guys just laid it on the line, man. They call them the Northern Savages. They just roll right in the door, man, and they're in the game. It's a hell of a job. And then our offense, we knew they were going to need to carry the load. You need to carry a little bit more of the backpacks and such, and man, we did that. They did that, stepped up in a big way, and it was a number of guys really made plays for us across the board.
Okay, guys, give me your overall reaction in a sentence or two. James, let's start with you on this one.
I think it's great that wine goes splendidly with grated cheese. Wine spelled a little differently.
Yes, it is a different type of wine you're referring to. I'm going to say coaching matters. This team doesn't quit. So many guys stepped up. And I said coaching matters last week. It matters again this week. There's going to be a lot to dissect and unpack from that, and we'll talk about the coach in depth. But the fact that nobody quit in this game on the Lions, even though it felt like at times the defense might have been being held together by duct tape, they got the job done. Coach Angers, how about you?
I just think the ability to fight adversity as well as to put the pieces in place in critical situations is unbelievable.
All right. Well, and James, you had one more thing you wanted to add here at the very beginning you thought was kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. At some point, I'm like, can we talk about the dude who snuck a block of real cheese into the game and had a cheese grater and was sitting there in the front row grating cheese during the game? That was epic.
I always wonder in things like that, how do they know the camera will find them before they run out of their cheese, right? Because they only have so much cheese. So how do you decide when you're going to start grinding or grating the cheese versus is now a good time? Do you think the cameras will find me? So I always find that interesting.
And I think some of those cameramen will kind of let people in and that we're going to pan over to you kind of, and you can see where the camera's pointed to.
True that. Okay, guys, let's get into what we liked about this game. And I'm going to start with the defensive line early on. I mean, in the first half, Jordan Love threw for 31 yards. The Lions held him and that offensive Green Bay in check. And O'Connor was playing really well early on, which was huge because even in the first half, McNeil had to leave for a little bit. And we'll get to the second half in a little bit. But even Turner, he and Turner both got some early pressure, James. And you got some guys who had very little experience in this defense.
Yeah, Ezekiel Turner had a big pressure early, I think that led to a punt by the Packers there. So I mean that one was huge. He didn't get the sack, but I think he was kind of the guy who created the pressure that I think when Zadarius Smith got the sack. Um, and he seemed to be kind of all over the place. He seems like a guy that maybe when their Lions are at full strength, he may stick around. And a couple of these other guys too. I mean, the new guys came in and looked solid. All four of them played pretty decent. None of them looked like a liability or guys who had only been there for 2 or 3 days. So I was pretty happy with those guys when the defense forced. What did they get? One first down in their first three possessions, I think. And I think that might have been even by penalty. I was giddy with the defense at that point. I came into this game expecting the Packers to roll up like 50 points. I mean, they're
Yeah,
playing a JV defense.
well, that's the thing. They did get a lot of stuff down late in the game, the second half. Their offense got rolling, but the Lions were up 17-7 at the half, coach. And the defense, especially early, was getting a lot of pressure on Jordan Love. And as we talked about, and everyone has, the number of injuries, and it got worse even during the game later on when McNeil got knocked out. But, Coach, how does the coaching staff do this? I mean, you had multiple guys playing on defense who had been in the building for less than a week.
Minnesota Viking 8-man front. I mean, seriously, guys, they dialed up, and you knew when they move one of the new guys that just comes in and turn him into from a safety to a linebacker, and you know that he's going to be coming off the edge. We just talked about it. He put the pressure on there. AG dialed a bunch of different pressures up to offset that. They hit him a lot. They hit Love a lot. He got smacked around, and I think they kept that on there. We talk about this week in and week out. We had them down. We had them on the ground. We had our foot on the gas, and we put our foot on the brake, and they hit that splash play, that big bomb in the third quarter, and that turned
Yep.
things around a little bit. So I don't think about how many yards they ended up with, but you take that play away, that game is over. I believe that. But that again, we let them feel good. You know what I'm saying? He felt good. He felt, oh yeah, we just hit it. We talked about it at halftime, and so we kind of unraveled a little bit. And of course, we gave them up a 30-yard score. But yeah, just for what they did is incredible. You know, defensively for what we did with the pressures, with the coverages, and things like that, and to have AG and all those guys step up. And I think you brought up O'Connor. That dude, he was a freaking one-man wrecking crew, you know, and especially after McNeil went out, you know, you got him doing those things. And I thought Muhammad did a great job again. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but it's just fun to watch these pieces come together and say, hey, we were pro athletes, or I was at home on a couch. I think there was a quarterback last year that was on a couch, and then he led a team into the almost the playoffs and shocked everybody. And that's what we did. And we used it. We used the guys, but there was some 8-man fronts out there, and I just loved it.
Yeah, and that got the pressure on them, and that kept Green Bay from putting some drives together early in this game and allowed the Lions to have the time of possession in the first half, which would actually carry over into the second and play a pivotal part in this game, I think, because when you have so many new pieces, at least those pieces aren't gassed at the end of the game and being worn out. The Lions had the time of possession 17-44 to 12-16 in the first half, and I do think that when the fourth quarter came, even though the Lions didn't make all the plays on defense, they were able to make enough, and they weren't exhausted to get pushed over. And so they did struggle at times in the second half. I'm kind of surprised that Green Bay didn't run a little bit more against them later in the game, because there were some moments where it looked like they might have been susceptible. I mean, when McNeil leaves this game, you're sitting there thinking, there's no McNeil, there's no DJ Reader, there's no Pascal, there's no Onwuzurike, there's no Hutchinson, there's no Davenport, like there's no Barnes. I think 6 out of the 7 starters are out of this game on the front part of that defense. And so all you've got is Jack Campbell, you know? And so that was something that kind of caught me by surprise. But even though we gave up 31 points, I loved what our defense did, especially early in this one, Coach.
Well, yeah. So at one point we had, well, this is basically our defense against him yesterday. Pat O'Connor, 7th round pick, Muhammad, 6th round pick, Adams, undrafted free agent. Agruda, undrafted free agent. Turner, undrafted free agent. Nowaski, undrafted free agent. David Long, just 6th-round pick, joined us 3 weeks ago. Joined us this week. Adams, Alexander, and Williams. Unbelievable, AG. Unbelievable. And unbelievable to each one of those guys. They bought
Yeah.
into the program. And, one of the things I listened and talked to, I was, I was listening to the GOAT today, Nick Saban, and, he talked about it. He says, you take your situations and you're not dummying it down, but you put them into a thing. He kind of said something about throwing stuff into a bucket and then throwing it against the wall. And then when it sticks, you pull it off. And what falls off, you throw it in the bucket and throw it back up there again. And that's what the
Yeah.
Lions did. And those guys bid. So it was just great to see.
Yeah, and you know what? I also think it tells you how important having a good secondary is, because I think that helped keep a lot of things at bay, James.
Yeah, yeah. And what the Packers did, and I kind of noticed it during the game too, is I'm like, they're doing a Ben Johnson. Like they were able to run the ball pretty decently in the first half, and then they just stopped in the second half and like went full on pass mode. So apparently Ben Johnson is not the only person who does that.
Yeah, evidently not, because you're right. I actually was texting out, like, the Lions have to be able to stop the run in the second half, and especially with McNeil being out, I was worried that would be a vulnerable point where Green Bay would just try to, run the clock and keep the Lions offense off the field. And that didn't happen. And that meant the Lions offense was on the field. Jared Goff completed passes to 6 different guys. And they each had 5 or more catches. That I don't think has ever been done before. That talks about spreading the ball around and working to what they needed to do. And so, when you look at that box score, okay, he threw the ball 41 times. I think that's the second most attempts he's had this year. But Williams, Laporta each had 5 receptions, as did St. Brown and Montgomery. Gibbs and Patrick each had 6. And, of course, Gibbs and Patrick had touchdowns. And so Jared Goff was getting the ball out. He was, he made his mistake. We'll talk about that as well. But he was on target, and he didn't let that mistake rattle him. And he also became the first Lions quarterback, you guys, I don't know if you heard this stat, to throw 25 touchdowns in a season 3 years in a row. And I wanted to make sure this was right, so I went and double-checked it. And Stafford never threw 3 in a row. He just threw, he did, like 24 one year and stuff. He was close, but he never did that. And so Jared Goff was exceptional in this game. James, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and yeah, throwing the ball, 41 times, I think it was.
Yep.
In this game, and completing 32 of them, for one thing. But the Lions ran 76 offensive plays to 45 for Green Bay. Green Bay only got in 45 plays, playing against that beat up of a defense. And like you said, the secondary being helpful was just a saving grace there, because they could play, especially early on, they could play some more man, so they'd be able to send those guys and have the more than 4 or 5 guys on the front. And those first I think that completely threw the Packers for a loop. Just how many guys they were sending guys from different. They look like Brian Flores a little bit in that first quarter. Those first three possessions, they didn't know what to do. I don't know if you saw the one time when they showed Jordan Love on the sideline, and he's just like staring into space, like he couldn't believe what was going on.
Yeah, I did. And Coach, I think part of the reason the Lions were able to do as well on offense in the second half is I think they actually adapted quite well. I'm going to say the running game was okay for the Lions, but it wasn't great. There were moments where the Lions weren't able to kind of get the yards they needed to. We saw that on that 4th and 1 play from their own 30, and we'll talk about that. But I think the Lions countered that with those short screen passes. Montgomery and Gibbs each added 30 more yards on that. And so it seemed like Ben Johnson really was on with this.
Oh yeah, the easy dumps, those check downs in the middle. It's the same thing as a run play. It's no different. It's just okay, he threw it. And with them bringing as much pressure and stuff as they were up front, and so that deterred our run game a little bit. It's funny, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine who just said, "Why do the Lions run that toss sweep all the time? It never works in the NFL." And I'm like, okay, first of all, here's the word never. And second of all, it does work. And, a lot of things too is some of our plays, some of the things that get broke down on those run plays were, different assignments, or we couldn't have Skipper check in as that other tight end. We ran 13 personnel, guys. You know how happy I was when we opened up in 13 personnel?
Yes,
Duke
I
and I
do.
almost did a cartwheel out of the upper bowl. We were so excited. It was like 13 personnel and saying, yes, three tight ends, but that it takes away from the skippers. And then I don't know if you guys noticed, but Mahogany played too a little bit. He
He
came in
did.
and he missed the key block and a run play, and I'm not faulting him on it, but I'm just saying all those different things, but we just kept, so that comes back to your short pass game. We came back to that and said, okay, I don't care who's in there, granted. And now Skipper, one pressure out of all those pass and snap plays. That a boy, big dog. And plus he drew a 15-yard penalty, which was even better. But so those are the things that we look at and what you see, and that's when you're going, man, they're just the scheme. And I want to talk about the scheme on the offense a little bit. Are we okay with that? I'm just the scheme that we did, St. Brown in the backfield, the motions. They did it again, you guys, down on the goal line where they came out of a timeout and Goff was pointing receivers back and left and right, and JMO started right and went to the left, and St. Brown went to the left and went to the right, and then came. I mean, and we're up in the stands, and I'm talking to the guys I'm with. I'm going, that's all a show, you guys. And I think the play when Goff came to the sidelines on the fourth down run, Goff came to the sidelines 3 times to talk to Dan Campbell. 3 times. Monty
Wow.
ran on the field to talk to Gibbs, and then Gibbs came off the field, and Monty came on. And those are, I think they put shows on there, and to see that defense, shaking their heads and trying to figure out where St. Brown was. St. Brown walks out and gets out of the huddle, and he stays down so nobody can read his number. Well, how dumb are they? All they had to do was find his shoes, and he was in the backfield. But I'm just saying those are things that I love. And I'm going to bring it up. I did this in a regional final when we beat Montague. Okay, we lined up in 13 personnel. Finn Hogan, our best athlete, was on the sidelines. And we came out, and all Montague was doing was, where's five? Where's five? Where's five? And we threw the ball to a sophomore named Brett Peterson to tie the game up. And that's why, as a coach, I sit there and I'm up there and I'm just drooling and excited because I'm going, oh, this stuff's good. Maybe I was kind of smart.
I think you may have been, coach, and that just again helps us understand how important this coaching is, and just it enlightens us how smart this coaching staff is.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes there's just not enough credit given there.
No.
Let's move over to some turning points, some pivotal moments. I think the first one, the forced fumble by CD3, right? And I believe David Long recovered that thing. That was huge because that led to a Jake Bates field goal, a 43-yarder, put the Lions up 10-0. The Packers were driving at that point a little bit, and this gave us a 2-score lead right away. Coach, how? I mean, it wasn't another touchdown, but it was more points, and it slowed the momentum of the Packers, and it also probably made the Packers feel a little tighter at that point.
Oh, I agree. And I think, when you talk about that as a point, because that kind of extends the lead and then makes them chase. Now they're chasing points, but it also, the turning point also in that first half, which makes them start slow, is we get a sack on was it the first play of the game or first series of the game?
Yep.
And we put that pressure. So, but yeah, getting to that 10-point concept, you guys are on that. But then what does the pack? They answer. And then what do? We answer. Now they feel they got momentum back. We went right back at them and punched them in the mouth. So,
We
but
did.
the biggest momentum I think, and I'm going to throw this at you guys real quick: 1,079 days. 1,079 days. Last time Tim Patrick had a touchdown. 1,079 days. TP. But anyways, I couldn't have been more excited in the stands. And then when he caught the second one, it was double that. So.
And before we move on to some other stuff, I want to hear, James, you have some more things on Jake Bates because we just talked about how that field goal put them up 10-0.
Yeah, well, I mean, regarding his one at the end of the game, so he's got 4 game-tying or go-ahead field goals with under 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter overtime this season. So that's second most in franchise history, only behind Matt Prater, who had 6 in 2016. So he's still got a chance at going like that. But hopefully none of the games the rest of the season are that close.
Yeah. Well, that was still pretty impressive by him to do that. Another thing that was big for the Lions was that score right before halftime. On fourth down, they completed it and got a touchdown. I mean, they could have taken the field goal, but they went for it on fourth down. They got the touchdown. That put them up 17-7 at the half, and it left no time for the Packers to try and get a drive because they were hoping to get a drive, hold us to a field goal, have 45 seconds or something to do something of their own, James. And it just seemed like that worked out really well for the Lions.
Yeah, that's one thing that Campbell did really well the whole game, especially at the end of the first half and the end of the game itself, was just keep the ball away from the Packers, not give them a chance to respond and answer. That quick wheel route there to Gibby was a great designed play. And that was a nice long grinding drive to put them up 17-7. That had to really kind of sting for the Packers.
Yeah, and Coach, you brought up how when the Packers scored in the third quarter, we came right back, and we took a 7-minute drive to do that. We had to go for it on fourth down twice on that drive. Once was the touchdown result to Tim Patrick, and so, I mean, if you're going 3 and out and punting at that point, it's going to make it a very difficult second half. And so that was a crucial drive right there. We responded, and we got our defense off the field for 7 minutes, Coach.
Oh, for sure. And I think that was the big thing. The message was from Dan Campbell was he basically told the offense this week it's their job to carry the team. And I love that, that he challenged them. That's our fourth time we've scored on fourth down against the Packers in this 2 games, right? I think we've had 4 scores on fourth down plays. Think about that. And I think that's the biggest thing. They challenged them. They challenged them in that situation that they have to. And the nice thing is the defense put us in position in the first half. We're up 17-7 going into the second half, correct? So we put us in a position where they had to chase points. And then basically, you're not going to outscore us. You're not going to outrun us. I mean, Love said in his press conference, we're going to explode some offense too. You certainly do. But every time you explode, we blow it up on the next time we got the ball. I'm sorry, and that's the thing is, and so I think that's one of the biggest things with Campbell with that challenge. And those guys, that team takes everything to heart, man. They take it to heart. And Dan said the same thing, and you heard it in the presser that, hey, I told him we're going to go for it on fourth down many times today. Well, again, told his team what he's going to do, and he did it. And of course, they answered because they buy into it.
All right. Well, a couple other things that were pivotal that didn't necessarily work in the Lions' favor was you had the Jared Goff interception where it looked like he wasn't looking in that direction. He looked over and he went quick. And then also late in the third quarter, the Lions were leading 24-21, and they go for it on 4th and 1 from their own 30-yard line, and they did not get it. Now, the Lions were 3 for 3 on third downs before that, or actually I think 3 for 3 on fourth downs before that. Jerry and James, I want to hear from both of you guys. James, what were your thoughts on the Lions going for it? It didn't work out, but what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, my guess, and I thought it was a little bit of an odd call even for Campbell, was just that again he keep the ball away from the Packers offense, keep your defense off the field. I think it was the thing that he was thinking. That's what came to my mind.
All right, and I'm thinking, Coach. Here, I think I know why Dan did that. All right. I think it goes to that where our offense is our strength. You talked about it. He talked about it after the game that he was putting it on his offense. He wanted them to win this game. Now, that did put the Lions defense in a bad situation on a very short field. But I saw 2 Lions miss blocks on that, a wide receiver and a tight end. And so, Coach, I think the play would have worked if a couple more blocks are picked up. You've got a better eye for this than I do, so talk to me about this play.
I was just going to say that Laporta was assigned inside to Walker, I believe, and he whiffed. He missed it. We didn't come down on it hard enough. I think Walker was coming so hard. I think he knew the play was coming that he was in that, probably he was inside of his normal aim point. And I think, and again, maybe they didn't identify it before they went in to line up on that play. Cause a lot of times you want to identify and go, oh man, he's usually at 5 yards. Well, now he's only at 4. So your first aiming point. So if he comes a little bit flatter on that, we probably pick that up. Gibbs he's going to make one guy miss in that situation. Two, absolutely not. And so again, that's one of those things. John Harbaugh did it 2 weeks ago. You guys watched the game. He was looking for a charge. Again, it wasn't the same score and things like that, but he felt I think he was at his 28-yard line. Dan Campbell's influencing a lot of people. And that was he told the guys 3 yards or less on 4th down, we're going for it. If we're over the 42-yard line, he just said and that's Dan Campbell, and those guys tried to get it. And it could have backfired a little bit, but again, we talked, where most of the pressure in this game was on Green Bay. We only have one loss. And we were banged up. And so I think that was one of the things. I think Dan went in there and said, we're going to throw everything at him, the kitchen sink, and we're going to see if we can pull this one out. And we pulled it out. So,
and I think the thing that sometimes people overlook is the Lions coaching staff prepares the players for these moments. Mm-hmm. They don't say, hey, we're going to go for it, and it catches the players off guard. They've been preparing for it all week so they know what to expect, so that they are in that position to succeed as best as possible. And so, things don't always work. And even the one that worked at the very end, which we'll talk about in a moment, some people still are not believing in it, even though it happened. Another thing I want to talk about, the second to last drive. It was the last drive for the Packers. After the penalty, it forced them back. On 3rd down, Jordan Love breaks containment, and Ezekiel Turner makes the tackle. And that tackle made it so that it was not going to even be conceivable to try and go get a touchdown. They were going to settle for the field goal to tie the game, James. And that really changed the rest of the game right there.
Yeah, Turner had a huge game. I mean, in the box score that I saw only credited him with 1 tackle the whole game. But I mean, he was all over and he was impacting plays. His PFF grade for the game was 91.8. for his 17 snaps that he had. That's the best he's ever had in his career. And he's at 77.6 so far in what he's played in the last few weeks, filling in for Jalen Reeves-Maybin and Barnes and the litany of injured linebackers and stuff. That would, if he had the number of snaps to get him into the actual rankings, that would be 12th among all linebackers.
Wow, that is incredible. And again, that was a huge play, because if he doesn't make that tackle there, Coach, they're going to be looking at a 4th and shorter, and you never know what they're going to do at that point. Maybe they're going to try and go for it if it's like 4th and 2 or 4th and 3. I don't remember, the whole situation as far as how much further Jordan Love could have gotten downfield at that point, but I do know that Ezekiel Turner made his one-on-one tackle.
Huge. It was like that spy tech. It almost reminded me of what we did against the Texans with Houston,
yep.
where he sat back. I think it was the exact same concept where we're going to drop into coverage. You're eyeing him because Love had a couple big runs in the first half, where we kind of we didn't get the squeeze, which we would have had the squeeze if we had Reeder and McNeil and stuff in there. And again, not talking bad about anything those guys did. And so that's, that was just a huge play. And again, that's AG coaching guys up. James just said he had his best grade ever. Okay. Is it because we've made him a better football player? Again, we're going to go back to it. We put him in a position to be successful and play fast. And defense is about playing fast. And if you're comfortable, if the game is slow, you're going to play fast. He sat back there and said, please, Love. I'm telling you right now, he's sitting back there. Don't throw the ball. Don't throw the ball. Please scramble, because I'm going to make one of the biggest. And, that's, again, a huge turning point. When we watch the Lions, we get so many dang turning points. What one is the biggest? That one's one. You guys called it. That's one of the big ones up there.
Yep, and I think the only thing that might eclipse that is the one that came after. Wow. The final drive, 4th and 1, 4th and inches, whatever, 43 seconds left. The Lions had been 3 for 4 on 4th downs at that point. They're at the 31-yard line. It's a 48-yard field goal. You have the opportunity to kick the field goal to take the lead by 3 and leave about 38 seconds left on the clock. Or you can go for it on 4th and 1, and if you don't get it, it's tied. James, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on the Lions' decision to even do this?
I was watching the game with my wife at a local restaurant, and she was like, "What are they doing? Why are they going for it on 4th down here? Why don't they kick the field goal?" And I'm like, if they get this, the game's over. I mean, if they get this, they can run the clock down all the way to nothing and kick a field goal, and the game is over, and the Packers can't do a thing about it. So I'm like, this is great. I think Jerry mentioned earlier, Emmanuel Acho was criticizing Campbell on Twitter for going for it in that situation, and I'm like, it's just another out of the box thing for Campbell. Yeah, it's the first time anybody has done it in the NFL in this century in that
Yeah.
situation. The first time that anybody has gone for it on 4th down inside the other team's 30 with under a minute to go in a tie game.
I think I saw it happen in like 1945 or something in a football game once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coach, what about you? What are your thoughts on this play?
I'll tell you, I listened to that. I listened to all the shows on the way home, driving this morning. I made sure I left right at 8 o'clock so I could listen to Good Morning Football. And Brant had you got to listen to him just telling people to be quiet, that Dan Campbell is the man and quit questioning them. And then of course, they're in the argument. The big argument was on Get Up. And the same thing that was the dumbest thing you could ever done. Everybody's like, this is stupid. Okay, guys. And then I'm gonna get the GOAT. They talked to the GOAT today about it. Nick Saban, the GOAT. The guy, he's the GOAT. I'm sorry, he's the GOAT. And what does Nick Saban say? My goal was always to win a football game with my offense. If the offense can finish the game off, finish the game off. And my biggest thing on that is Dan Campbell, what if he wouldn't have got it? He got it. What if he wouldn't? What if we'd have thrown 5 interceptions in a game? Oh, that's right. We won that game too. But what if, it's always about what ifs, and everybody on the social media and these guys think they're all experts on that. Dan Campbell used analytics. Dan Campbell used his heart. Dan Campbell shut his brain off a little bit and said, my boys are going to get this. I can run the clock out and kick the field goal to win the game. Okay, and then everybody said, well, 43 seconds. Okay, Patrick Mahomes 3 years ago took him 13 seconds to get down the field. 13 seconds with no timeouts to get down the field to kick a field goal to win a game. 13 seconds. I'm going to say that again. So what if we have a broken coverage and Jordan Love throws we kick the field goal in 43 seconds. Jordan Love throws a long pass, boom, boom, boom. Next thing we lose. Why are we going to put the ball in Jordan Love's hands? And again, I'm going to bring it up again, these guys. Branch is out. McNeil is out. Joseph is banged up. I don't know if you guys saw Joseph on the TV after about 5 plays in a row, barely getting off the ground. And Dan Campbell said, I challenged my offense to win this football game. And what did they do? 12 personnel, motion, crack, Sewell, Monty, angry run, 1st down, game over. Leave it alone. Quit trying to make your social media and being gods. We're 12-1.
And Sewell was so angry on that run, he knocked everything out of his way. That includes Jared Goff, okay? And Jared Goff got that handoff. That could be a play of the game right there by not losing composure, finishing that. I'm going to agree with you guys on this going for it. I couldn't believe it was happening. I'm like, he's not really going to do this, but he did. And it's analytics. It's not just I have a gut feeling. It's, hey, it's a tie football game right now. We're not losing. So if we don't get this, we haven't lost the game. That's a big thing to understand. I think a lot of people are overlooking that part. The other thing is, as we talked about, would you rather have your offense, which has 10 out of 11 starters on the field playing to win the game? Or would you rather have your defense, which has maybe 4 out of 11 starters on the field trying to win a football game? You're exactly right. Jordan Love could find an opening in that secondary on that final drive. Anything can happen. I didn't feel good when the Lions had to punt the ball against the Bears on Thanksgiving. And if it wasn't for worse coaching, better coaching, whatever, there's a chance the Lions could have lost that game if the Bears had handled things differently. So exactly, when you have this offense, you want to finish the game with the ball in the hands of the offense. So I was surprised by it for sure. Excellently executed play to get that first down. But I also think people have to understand we weren't trailing at that point. So even if it didn't happen, the defense would still be left to do its thing, and then you still have overtime. So it wasn't like we were trailing and we were going to lose the game if we didn't pick up that first down. That maybe if we're down by 1 point, maybe Dan Campbell kicks the ball right there. Probably doesn't, but I'm just saying that's another element to the equation. So, and then that handoff as he's falling down. I mean, that's got to also add to, Jared Goff's composure, right, James?
Yeah, for sure. And the people that were sitting at the table over from us were like, "Well, his knee was on the ground. Why isn't he down?" And everything like that. I'm like, this isn't high school football. Somebody has to touch him.
High school.
Coach, how impressed were you on that?
What's that, when he fell?
Yeah, and he still got the ball to Monty, and
we could see it,
Zeitler opens it.
Yeah, well, like he said, he's 6'4", which helped. The other thing was there's no way he was not getting the ball. I think Goff even said I would have tossed the ball to him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just beautiful that he did it. And again, that's that mentality that they have. They don't back down from it. It was funny. One of the other guys, of course, what if Goff, when he tripped and his elbow hit and the ball came loose and Green Bay scooped and scored? I'm like, oh my God, yeah. What if, guys, stop the what ifs, man? What if we didn't score? Well, we did. It's over with. So I just love it. It was just good stuff. But yeah, just and funny because we're in the stands. I told you guys that we're in the stands going, okay, we just burned a timeout. What are we doing? Is he going to go for it? Oh my God, is he going to try to draw him off sides? Well, here's another thing that we didn't talk about, guys. The defense. What is the defense yelling when they line back up? What is the defense yelling to each other? Don't jump. Don't jump. Don't jump. Some defensive linemen even back up a half a yard off the ball so they don't get caught into the neutral zone, right? So we walk them into that. So, and if you guys look at the push from our offensive line, the defensive line had all they were doing is sitting back on their heels or on their toes going. They didn't have white knuckles. Right. In other words, for their hands weren't dug in. They were sitting back on their heels going, don't jump, don't jump. Well, guess what? You didn't jump. You got pushed. And so, again, strategy and coaching wise is phenomenal.
All right. Now, James, I want to ask you a question. I know you want to add something as well. I don't know if you know this rule or not, but can a NFL team take 2 timeouts in a row? Because I don't think they can. And if the Lions had already called a timeout, there's no way they were going to try and make them jump unless they were willing to take a 5-yard penalty, because so you see how it doesn't add up if that's the case. So James, comment on that, and then you wanted to add something else as well.
Yeah, you can't take back-to-back timeouts. That would be a penalty or a runoff. But the only what if I want to hear is what if the Lions defense was still healthy.
Oh, yes. Oh, that. And you know what? I heard a Packers fan, I think it was on one of the morning shows, and they asked the Packers fan, do you want to see the Lions in the playoffs? And they're like, no, we don't want to see them again. I mean, if it means going to the Super Bowl, I'm sure they would, but they're not out hunting looking for the Lions right now, because this was about as beat up as the Lions have been on defense. And yeah, well, we'll get into some more of that under the major storylines, but let's get into things we didn't like or some concerns. James, get us started there.
There was a couple of things before the game even started. We saw a couple of Packers players kind of saying some things maybe they shouldn't have before the game. But so Kirby and Tucker apparently had to be separated before the game during the pregame because Tucker said that he wanted to get his hands on him and kind of alluded to Kirby Joseph being a dirty player or something. And then I don't know if you guys saw or not the thing where Matt LaFleur got into a shouting match with a Lions fan before the game. Jerry, you were at the game. Did they do a thing with like a big U.S. flag on the field?
Yeah, it was one of the guys on their sideline when they pulled the flag out.
It was one of the guys. Yeah,
we kind of saw it even when we were sitting up in the seats. We could kind of see it. I'm like, man, something's not right down there right now.
Yeah, it was a guy in a Brian Branch jersey, of all things.
Of
yelling at
course.
and you can't tell because his back is turned, so you can't see what he says, but you can see what LaFleur says back to him, and it's not repeatable. Where he says "shut the blank up" repeatedly to this guy. So not even I'd rather you be the cheese grater guy than being the yelling at the opposing coach guy
Yeah.
while you're on the field doing a patriotic thing.
Little
Yeah,
different, little different if you're in the stands, but yeah. Yeah.
right. And you know what? I mean, yeah, that probably is definitely not cool. You don't want to things like that to escalate. But also, I'm going to put some of that on the head coach to not allow it to escalate and go back and help antagonize it. So, but yeah, definitely not cool at all there, coach.
Going on the craft thing, I wanted to touch a couple. It's funny because um, that first catch that Kraft had, Brian Branch freaking just pounded him. And I'm like, well, that was a payback for Kirby Joseph. He came over to the sideline and said, got him for you. Then the other one was that one down near the end zone, and Kraft we got sandwiched between two guys. I didn't know if he's going to get up. And then athletically, man, when he popped up onto his feet off his back, I was like, that was pretty impressive. But
Very
again,
impressive.
but then again, let's talk about another Mr. Kraft. Probably shouldn't run your mouth too much because when you come across as an H back and you're going to seal the end, and an undrafted free agent, never Trevor Nowaski, totally lights you up and sends you on a 5-yard thing. Trevor is all over the internet on that hit, and they
That
even
was
brought it up
amazing.
on. Oh, it was, and they brought it up on 2 or 3 of the shows, and so. Kraft, and again, that's that karma thing. You're going to run your mouth, man. You're going to get hit, and nothing was dirty. And
Nope.
basically, they
Nope.
just told him, they just showed him, like, yeah, you're a pretty good football player, but we're pretty mean. And I'll tell you, it's another one I saw, and I don't know if you guys noticed it. Walker walking through our offensive huddle. I think it was in the third quarter. He walked. He would come around. The play was done. We were in the huddle. He walked right through the middle of the huddle. That Walker, right? 53 is their line. Yeah, 53. And I'm like, they didn't even look at him. There was a couple other bumps here and there where they were kind of bumping those guys, and I go, "You're trying to intimidate our guys. You're just going to make them matter." And so, anyways, what
I
goes
think
Yeah.
around
Walker,
comes around.
I think Walker's 7, but I'm trying to remember
Oh
which
yeah, now,
linebacker it was. I'm trying to remember which linebacker it was that hurt the referee, too.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, one of the referees had to leave the game for a little while with a shoulder injury after one of the linebackers from the Packer just walked right into him in between plays.
Well, I liked the Trevor Nowaski play a lot. That was a great play by him. We're obviously in the area of things we didn't like or things that concerned us, but you kind of spun that around based on the trash talking from the other team.
right.
And I'm glad we got to bring up the Nowaski hit because when that happened, I just was like, wow. And knowing that we've had Trevor on the show before, and I know that you've coached him, so that was awesome to see the success he has had. The pass interference in the end zone, those penalties are just killer because when you get the ball first and goal at the 1, I mean, it's almost a foregone conclusion. I don't know, what is it, 80-90% of the time they're going to get a touchdown at that point. That was also on a third down play. And so he was there. It was a penalty, but it was close.
Mhm.
And so that was a bummer. McNeil being out the entire second half, did not like that because that made me nervous the whole second half. Like, how are we going to hold up with the run defense? And James, we already talked about that. They pivoted away for us. So they helped us with that.
Yeah, I had in my notes that I was writing down during the game. I'm like, after McNeil left, there is no pass rush. They were not getting a lot of pressure on Jordan Love after that. And after the big play to Watson, I think they kind of stopped dialing up those extra blitzers as well a little bit and just going with the 4 a lot of the time.
Well, and that play where they got that big one to Watson, you saw Branch start cheating in on that play, and it looked like he cheated in late and didn't get a great jump, which I think is what maybe allows some of that to happen. But Coach, you've got some stuff here.
Yeah, and again, back to that was they did call awesome cross blitz with Campbell, and Campbell whiffed on the sack. And again, you got to slow down a little bit. And I'm going to give Love kudos on that because the dude sidestepped it, reset his feet, and threw a strike. And And so those are things that, if he gets home on that, again, it's a whole different game. And again, if it was Rodrigo, or one of those other guys that were blitzing, but now Campbell's got to blitz and he's got to run coverage, he's got to make the calls. And again, that dude, he is playing some serious ball. So, but that's a strictly a Love. Love was just showed the quarterback he could possibly be with that
Yeah.
play. That was one of those plays that I haven't, and he threw a couple other balls too. So I think those are, but yeah, you saw the cheats and stuff like that. And you don't get home on a Love, that's a negative. So.
For sure. And, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'm talking about Jordan Love. That touchdown pass to Kraft. I mean, that was a laser.
Yeah.
Carlton Davis had great coverage on that, and he threaded a needle to get that in there. That was a great pass. And I guess to go back to the McNeil injury, seeing the replay, it almost looked like it was friendly fire. Like Jamal Adams jumped on the pile at the end of the play and hit McNeil in the head.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And it hurt. I mean, physically, literally, all that stuff.
Yeah. Good thing is that we have the long week now.
Yeah.
So that'll help McNeil, I think, be able to get back from concussion protocol. It'll help Carlton Davis, who at times looked like maybe he wasn't fully recovered from that injury, but he's coming back from too. So hopefully that extra rest will be good for him too.
Yeah, I think that extra rest can be good for a lot of people. Another thing that goes into the area we didn't like you to have to is the Jared Goff interception. That hurt. The backer scored 7 on it. They took the lead 21-17. It goes in there. He didn't throw 5, though, Coach. He threw 1. And you know what? The floodgates didn't open. He made a mistake, right, James?
Yeah. It was one of those things where he was it was kind of a blind throw. He was trying to look the other way to get to move the safeties and then went back and threw to his guy that he was going to throw to the whole time. And Keyshawn Nixon didn't bite on where he was looking and was right there.
All right. Well, let's move over to any other major storylines. Just, things that we've kind of hit on some of these, but the pressure by the defense early on, even though that didn't stay up the whole game, that kind of set the stage, right, Coach? I mean, then something's in the back of your brain as a quarterback where maybe you don't always feel like you can hold on to the ball as long, or does it affect how you play throughout the game?
Well, it affects it. And again, when he makes that big throw in the third quarter, he makes that throw in the third quarter. I don't know what Davis moved on, he got caught on. I haven't watched it on TV, but that kind of rejuvenates you. That kind of gets back. And
Yeah.
goes, okay, these hits don't hurt as much. But then again, we weren't getting much pressure on. But then who took over after that? The crowd. That place was electric, you guys. And I know you've been there, but I was watching the decibel thing, and every one of those critical situations, it never went below 115.
Nice.
It was just rocking. And I think that's, again, timeout, a couple timeouts, I think it cost them. Is that right, you guys? I know it cost them one false start. It cost them a second false start. I mean, a second clock violation, but not sure why they took it off. The clock was at a 0. The official back judge threw the flag, and then he called the timeout, and they gave him the timeout. We were looking at it the whole time, and I mean, it was that one way. They give him that extra click. It was way over that extra click. So, but again, positive stuff there again as usual.
Yeah. No, so that was great there. I'm glad to hear the atmosphere was what we expected it to be. And again, being against Green Bay, being the NFC, huge. Lions, 4 for 5 on 4th down. We already kind of talked about it, but that's the difference maker in this game. And so let's talk about Coach Campbell right here, because this is, like you said, he's been called out for saying it wasn't a good play, even though it worked. And I'm a proponent of him. For multiple reasons. One is I think people look at him at the shallowest of depth and want to grade him on that without understanding the full complexity. Now, there's a chance I don't understand the full complexity, but we've seen time and again where the situation dictates it, even if it doesn't always work. Like, you can even go back to that 49ers game in the NFC Championship game, and you understand the situation our defensive secondary was in, and that's what motivated the decisions. You can still argue that maybe one of them wasn't right. I think two of them were right, but there's other things that cost that game. So, Coach, let's start with you. Overall, Coach Campbell, I mean, we know what the record is with him. Is he getting too aggressive? Is he, starting to play careless, or is this still calculated?
I'm going to go back to the San Francisco game. He kicked the field goal before halftime on a 4th and 3, but he said it was a little over that 3 mark. So that's why he kicked the field goal. If he goes and scores a touchdown there, we probably play in the Super, could be, this year, this last game, again, the same. It's the feeling, it's the position, it's the point, it's where we're at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
James had already alluded to his time, how well he used the clock in the first half and how well we use the clock at the end of the game. How many times this year we had great drives where we used the clock and just took all the time off the clock so the other team didn't have a chance to even get the ball back to have a Hail Mary throw or any of those things. So I think he has really grown in the calculated and I don't think he uses his heart as much or his Dan Campbell as much, big 6'5" burly guy where says we're tougher, we're badder, we're better than you. I think he took a long decision to make that 4th down play. I think he got it in his mind. I think he took all the analytics. And like he said I took everything into consideration. And if I can't get a half a yard running behind Panay Sewell, the best freaking right tackle in the game, with the 12 personnel, with the angry run Monty, you're losing it. And that play was well designed. And I think it was similar to the 1 touchdown run. And so, next against Buffalo, if that situation comes up, he might kick it because he says, we just need the 3 right here. And you know what? I'm not going to argue with it. I'm not going to fight it. And I was in the stands going, he's going to go for it. And I'm like, let's go get her, dude. Because that's what we're all about. So, but I think he's matured a ton in that situation. And again, he doesn't care what everybody's saying. You think he's looking at social media right now? He might be laughing because you know what he's going to say to him? 12-1.
Yeah, and you're right though. He has matured. He has grown as a coach. James, what's your analysis here?
Yeah, it worked, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's the basic thing.
Yeah.
If people can say that it was a bad call all they want, but it worked. And they had been getting it to work all day, 4 out of 5 on 4th down, and doing different things. It used to be in the NFL that 4th and 1, it was always just going to be running a running back right up the middle with a fullback lead and see if you could get that half of a yard and get the first down or whatever. The NFL now is just completely different. The Lions ran a quarterback sneak with Jared Goff one time, which you don't ever expect. They had the wheel route to Gibby on 4th down for the touchdown. And Ben Johnson is just so creative that he can make you think that it's going to be that we're just going to pound Monty up the middle. And so defenses never know what's coming. They can, a defensive coordinator can look at that situation and look at that alignment and everything and try to predict what's going to go on. But in the back of their head, they're like, I have no idea what's coming.
And the Lions have done enough different things to create that situation. They've made it real. And yeah, they've changed. Again, we've said this before. They're changing the way people play football. And that is based off intelligence right there. Coach?
Okay, let's go off of those quarterback sneaks. Okay, so the alignment, if you look at the alignment on their tackles, they were lined up either head up or in almost a 3 technique concept, given the whole middle of the field.
Yep.
Okay, given the whole middle right behind the center. Right. So then the next time they did it, they brought them in and went through like we used to call it TNT, tackle nose tackle. So you got 3 guys lined up in the middle. Okay, if you look at the 4th down run, I'm going to say it again. If you look at the 4th down run, they're in TNT. Okay, they got the tight guys are all inside. Well, what does that open up? Off tackle. And then we bring a motion across with a tight end to seal the edge. And you bring Sewell down, who ends up taking the D tackle or DN into the linebacker, I think into the safety, into the stands on his block. And James, you just said quarterback sneaks. Goff got up there, said, "You're giving me this? Okay, I'm taking it." And that's what they do. They set you up for everything they're going to do. Calculated risk, but it's set up to where it should be successful at probably an 80 to 90% rate.
All right. Let's move on here. We are starting to run a little bit short on time as we want to start getting this thing wrapped up. We talked about Tim Patrick's touchdowns already. That was pretty awesome. Jaden Reed, Coach, you were expecting some things out of this guy. James, what did you come up with?
I have no earthly idea why Jaden Reed only plays 20 snaps in the game, has 0 catches.
Yeah.
He's their best, most explosive playmaker on that offense. And every week they've been trying to scheme things up for him. They run trick plays. They run him on reverses. They do all this stuff. They did none of that this week. It was weird. I don't know if there's something going on with him or something, but I mean, that was just his lack of involvement was odd.
Yeah, I would agree. I was surprised to see that as well. I figured we would have seen more of him, especially with Dobbs out, just another guy that you want to get involved more. We talked about time of possession. The first half of the game ended. Lions had the ball 36 minutes to the Packers 24. Again, I think that was crucial in the second half. Even though the Packers were able to score on the Lions, it also meant the Packers defense was more tired at the end of the game as well. All right, let's talk about the Lions' longest winning streak in team history, 11 straight. This also qualifies them. They're 12-1, Coach. You said that about, if not 10 times, maybe 12 times this show. They're playoff bound now. The Lions are playoff bound. They have qualified, the first NFC team to qualify for the playoffs. First time since, I believe, the 93-94, the 94-95 season, that the Lions have qualified for the playoffs back-to-back years. So, guys, we talked about how important this game was. I know, Coach, 1 week at a time, only one game at a time. But this game was arguably the most important game of the rest of the games in the regular season for the Lions because it was going to set the table, right? It's an NFC game, and we were banged up. Now we're going to, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but this basically makes it nearly impossible for the Packers to win the division. It gives them a 3-game cushion over the Packers. Still only have a game and a half over the Vikings right now, but we're setting new Lions records at 12-1. We have an AFC game this week, and then we have the 3 other NFC games after that. We have the Bears, the 49ers, and the Vikings. And if the Vikings don't falter, that Week 18 game is going to be big, James. So what's your updated look at the team, the winning streak, the standings?
Yeah, like you said, the winning this game makes it almost impossible for the Packers to win the division. They would almost have to win out and have the Lions lose out because the Lions obviously have the tiebreaker. They won both games head to head. So they got to finish a game ahead of us, not tied with Detroit. So it makes that game at the end of the season against the Vikings maybe even bigger, but it also kind of makes it so that the Lions are now mostly just concerned about Minnesota and Philadelphia in the race.
Yeah, that's exactly. We're concerned about Minnesota, about winning the division, and then thinking about the Eagles with the NFC. Coach, what do you want to weigh in on here on these new milestones that we haven't seen since the heyday of Lomas Brown, or even before that?
It's good, and that's the big thing is the key with that is we made our prediction at the year by quarters. And I think we're 2 games ahead of where all 3 of us predicted, maybe 3 games ahead at this point. Because there was some things in the way they're doing it with the injuries. If we just continue to stay healthy with what we have, and we start adding some bodies, or the guys that just came in, get some more practices in with the schemes and stuff like that, then the sky's the limit. So it's fun to look at. I mean, this weekend's gonna be a fun weekend to watch games just to see where we end up.
That we will. I guess one other thing as we get into transition into final thoughts, James, you started the show with the wine and cheese. I got to tell you that there have been a lot of upset Packers fans or Packers people saying, I mean, there was one podcast of theirs on social media was saying the Packers played well enough to win, but not to overcome one of the most one-sided officiated games in recent memory for the Packers. Now, I'll always say this. I don't want to win a game or lose a game due to refereeing. I want it to be as on point as possible. That being said, were there calls missed in this game? Yes. For both sides? Yes. Okay? Fully admit that. It was not perfect. But at the same time, I don't agree with those statements right there. James, how did you see this thing? What was it? Were the Lions gifted this?
I don't think so. I mean, there was good and bad penalties called on both teams. Both teams were called for 7 penalties. It was the exact same even. The yardage was 59 for Green Bay and 56 for Detroit. You can't be called much more evenly statistically than that. The play that most of them are complaining about is the offensive pass interference call, and
Yeah.
that was textbook offensive pass interference. You're not allowed to hit a defender more than a yard downfield, and it was 2 yards downfield, and he hit Brian Branch, who was coming up to take that to cover that running back out of the backfield in that play, and I mean it's a definition textbook pick play.
And James, some people said it's ticky-tacky. It's really close. You know what my response to that is? There was a play when the Lions had an offensive lineman illegally downfield who wasn't even involved in the play, but he was a half a yard too far down the field. They threw a flag on us, and they called it back. And so you can say it ticky-tacky, but if it's there, it's there. And so you're right. By the letter of the NFL rules game, that's what it was. So, yeah.
So maybe just don't run a pick play in the biggest situation in of the game for you. Maybe don't run a play that you know is a pretty decent chance you get penalized for doing that. So the other thing they were complaining about on that play was that the flag came so late. But there was 2 of them, and they came at the same time, because in that play, for it to be offensive pass interference, you have to wait for the quarterback to throw the ball. Until he throws the ball, it's not offensive pass interference. But the second he
Okay.
throws the ball, then they can throw the flag.
Aha. That's a
If,
big, nobody brought that up. I saw a film breakdown on it and it wasn't even mentioned. That's a nice nice rule to bring up.
if Jordan Love keeps the ball and runs, that's not a flag.
Okay. Great point. Coach, you deal with refs or some of your best friends when the games start, and then at the end of the game, I mean, you guys probably hang out again, but what are your thoughts on all this stuff?
Well, the referees and I always had a good understanding was if you're going to be consistent, either be consistent bad or be consistent good.
Yeah.
Nowhere in between it. And the other thing too, I always taught talked to my players and said, don't let them dictate how the game's going to work out. If you're coming down and saying, well, this flag here and that flag there costs us a game, then we're not in a position to where we need to be. And so I think that's one of the biggest things with that. It's everybody's going to complain about the officiating. Winning team's going to go great, losing team's going to go bad.
Yeah.
You know it in the stands. Everything's a pass interference when we're out for pass routes, but everything else, man, that was a bad call when we're on defense. I think the other thing I was listening to the game. Excuse me. I'm having a problem with the casting booths and with the channels having an official that they call on immediately after a call is made, and he says that was a bad call. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about? They always have that official, and I was watching the Lions again today just to see it on TV, and that is frustrating because we're creating that because somebody hears that and they're going to go, whoever, I can't remember what the expert official is. Well, he said it was a pass interference.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
the
It
official
creates
on the
more
field-
doubt.
You're right. You know what I'm saying? So, and it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah.
he annihilated him. He freaking hammered him. He shouldered him, and oh yeah, he was running a pass route. Well, he dipped his shoulder a little bit, and I guess you're dipping under it, whatever. So it was under the rules, just like Arnold's tip that we intercepted in the end zone. That was called a PI, right? It was called a pass interference. Nobody talked about that. Well, I was holding. That was okay. It was pass interference. Okay, they called it. They called it. I can't next year Arnold probably won't have that call against them. This year he does. So
All right. Well, it's time for us to get out of here. But before we do that, let's wrap up these final thoughts. James, final thoughts here.
12-1. Like Jerry said.
And didn't you have something about Decker you wanted to put in there?
Oh, I didn't think it was funny. This isn't about the game or anything necessarily or whatever, but apparently Decker and Hutchinson had a bet between them on the Ohio State Michigan game, and the one that lost had to wear the other one's college jersey.
Helmet.
So Decker had pictures taken of him wearing Hutchinson's Michigan college jersey in the facility and helmet.
And helmet. Wow. There you go. And again, that final thought you had, like, what was it? What numbers were you just putting out there?
12-1.
12-1. All right. 12-1.
12-1.
All right. That is amazing. My final thought is going to be practice squad guys and new additions. Man, they stepped up and they showed that, you know what? Don't give up on your dream, folks. Don't give up on it, because coach told you where all they came from and when they came. And you know what? They weren't first, second, and third round draft picks, and they got the job done. Coach, final thought?
1-0 this week, and hopefully we get to 1-0 next week.
All right. It's a great way to end the show. Thank you so much, folks, for tuning in. Coach, James, thank you guys for being here as well. Again, folks, you can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Look for us on social. Subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.